Wonderful. So thank you all for joining us. This is a special UTC webinar jointly sponsored by two university transportation centers, TomNet, that is led by Arizona State University, and the TBD, that's the Travel Behavior and Demand National Center, led by the University of Texas at Austin. So my name is Pendyala. I'm the director of the TomNet University Transportation Center. Chandra Bhatt, who many of us know, serves as the director of the Travel Behavior and Demand Center, headquartered at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm joined today by the deputy director of TomNet and a longtime colleague, Steve Polzin, who's based in Florida, serves as a research professor here at Arizona State University, but is remote, based in Tampa, Florida. And Dr. Irfan Batur, who is the assistant director for both of these university transportation centers, TomNet and TBD. So I do want to acknowledge and thank the University Transportation Centers program for all of their support that has made it possible to develop this pretty neat dashboard. So the T3D is a comprehensive data dashboard for time, travel, and telework. It is heavily based on the American Time Use Survey. Irfan has been the mastermind behind this dashboard. We are mighty proud of it. And so I am going to merely try and keep us on time. We do have about 75 minutes for this entire webinar event. Following my brief introduction, we will go right into the presentation and a full-fledged demonstration of the T3D, the dashboard. And following that, Steve Polzin will provide us a commentary, essentially providing some thoughts and perspectives on what this dashboard can be for the profession, and what are the kinds of insights we can draw, what are some of the trends we're seeing, and what does that mean for transportation modeling and planning at large. So with that, let me just say, Dr. Irfan Batur has been received his PhD at Arizona State University, working very closely with me over the past few years. He received his PhD about a year ago, but has essentially been doing all the work here at TomNet and beyond for several years now, and so has been really a force behind some of the products that we have been trying to put out with the TomNet University Transportation Center, slowly kind of inching to a close. The center will be ending this year, but a lot of the work will continue under the auspices of the new TBD Center led by Chandra at UT Austin. So Irfan is widely published and has tremendous capabilities, both from a methodological perspective, but also with an eye towards practical real-world implementation. And the development of this tool kind of demonstrates that capacity and capability of Irfan. So with that, I am going to now turn it over. Irfan, all yours, to do a presentation demonstration, and then we will transition to a commentary by Dr. Polzin. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pendyala, for the nice introduction and for all those words. And I should say I'm still the student of Dr. Pendyala and still learning. So anyway, so let's get started. Thank you all for joining us today. So again, my name is Irfan Batur, and I'm not going to go into all those titles. Thanks to Dr. Pendyala, he already explained all of this for me. So I just want to quickly introduce the team who is behind the T3D. So Ashwat Bhatt, who is now with PayPal, and together with Roshan, so they were basically another two graduate students from our group who helped me develop this dashboard, but I should give most of the credit to Ashwat, who served as the lead developer. And also Dr. Pendyala, Dr. Bat, Dr. Pat Mokhtarian, Dr. Stephen Polzin, and Cynthia Chen served in the team as well. So this is just behind the team. This is the team behind the dashboard. So first of all, I just want to put this into context and just explain a little bit why we are basically developing these dashboards. So in the transportation landscape over the last 2 decades, we are seeing very new and significant disruptions and highly transformative forces in this landscape. So we are seeing more disruptions than ever, right? So highly frequent disruptions caused by whether the climate change, like extreme heat, hurricanes, and so on and so forth. And then there are other disruptions like the pandemics and or technological advancements like autonomous vehicles. And also the population, we also see very rapid changes in terms of demographics and very diverse lifestyle preferences. So these are basically increasing the uncertainty into transportation planning and in understanding how we can navigate this complex landscape. So to basically do that, we need better data. And so we thought we can basically harness the potential of already collected national survey data sets. So one of which is American Time Survey. So it is a very rich survey data set that provides a lot of insights into the daily lives of Americans. So again, at TomNet and TBD, so it is a part of our mission to develop open source and data-driven tools that can help the community and basically translate our research into practical applications. So this is one of the dashboards that we have developed, and we have other dashboards that's currently under progress as well. So here's a quick snapshot of the motivation. So again, American Time Survey is a very rich survey data set that we think that is underutilized in the transportation planning profession and beyond. And however, as I will explain in the coming slides, that navigating ATUS and basically getting insights from it, it's quite challenging for a broad spectrum of users. And we wanted to basically, our ultimate goal is democratize ATUS to make it more accessible and basically interpretable for everyone. So I will quickly explain how ATUS looks like and why it is kind of challenging to navigate the ATUS data series. So American Time Survey is basically a national representative estimates of how people spend their time. So it is sponsored by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and conducted by the Census Bureau every year since 2003. So now the latest one is 2023. So we have about like 21 years of data consistently collected for every year. So it's a very massive and rich data set. So the target population, target group for this survey is individuals 15 or older. So they were interviewed for their time use information for the previous day. So 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. They report the time, location, purpose of each of the activities that should be lasted for at least 5 minutes, and whom they were with during each of these activities. So we have very detailed activity information. And then there are also other rich demographic information and variables available for each respondent. So here is basically how it looks like. So it's a complete activity travel diary and time use diary of the people for 24 hours. And then we have about 10,000 respondents each year, except for the first year, 2003, where we have about 20,000 respondents. Again, this is how the structure of the activity types in ATUS. So there are basically, it's a hierarchical process. So in the first tier, so you have about 18 different main activity types in personal care, household activities, traveling, work, socializing, etc. And within each of these activity types, then you go to tier 2 and look into a little bit. You can zoom into these activities and see how that looks like for tier 2, and then you can further zoom in and look into more details about that activity. So what I mean is that it basically looks like this. On the right side, if you look into the personal care activities, for instance, this is the tier 1 activity, and on the left column, you have the tier 2, you have about 6 different detailed activity types. And then you can even go further and zoom in a little bit and look into the tier 3, and you will notice even more details about these activities. So basically, if you put all of this together, so tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you have about 426 different activity types. So it's very, very rich. And for travel, for instance, you have about 53 different trip purposes. And all of this richness comes with increased complexity. So you have, so all of this, to basically analyze ATUS, you need to download almost all of this data files, and you have to be able to connect all of this dots in order to get insights for your basically interested inquiry. And connecting connecting these dots means that there is basically a very steep learning curve in order to just to get familiarized yourself with the ATUS and be able to connect to all of this data. So what that means is basically in order to get insights from ATUS, you must have an advanced coding skills in order to connect all of these dots and analyze the data set. If not, you cannot analyze it. And for people with advanced coding skills, you can analyze it, but it is very time consuming. So every time you have a new inquiry or a research question, you have to modify the data sets and your codes and to get this insight and spend hours and hours analyzing these data sets. So we thought this is very time consuming, even for experts with advanced coding skills, and for others who doesn't have coding information or time to do that. So we just thought we could basically speed this process and make this dashboard so that people can easily access ATUS and get insights for their use. So these are our goals. Of course, we cannot basically visualize and put all the information that ATUS has on a dashboard because it's basically not practical. So we identify topics of interest to the community, and then we determine what to visualize in each topical area and what are the necessary analysis types that people would need. And then we design a simplistic and user-friendly platform so that the learning curve is very, very small. And then we process and optimize data visualization operations on the backend, data and visualization operations on the backend, so that it is very instantaneous to analyze the ATUS. And our ultimate goal is to keep this platform open source, make it easy to maintain so that when each new data is collected, for instance, each new data is collected, we can easily implement it and incorporate it into the dashboard. So it just within a matter of hours, we just did it recently for the 2023 data, and it's just within the matter of hours you can basically update it. And then we also seek continuous feedback for improvement of the platform. So if you have any feedback, please do share with us. So these are the 3 topical areas that we identify that are most interested in the community and beyond the transportation community as well. So it is the time use, travel, and telework. And within each of these topical areas, we also have 3 main analysis types. So there is the within year, between year, and cross-segment analysis types. So for the within year, basically you see a full picture of what happened in that topical area, right? In the time use patterns, how that looks like for 24 hours, and then all other things. So basically you see the full picture within year analysis. And then if you are interested in analyzing the trends on a specific basically variable, then you can do this using the between year analysis page, and you can track those changes in the data set over the years. And then if you are interested in comparing 2 different groups, you can do this by using the cross-segment analysis. You can, for instance, choose one demographic group and another demographic group, and then compare them on many different variables like number of trips over the years. So here are some use cases. So how can you use T3D? Basically, this is like, I think there are many different cases that you can use it, but these are three main things that I come up with for the purpose of this presentation. So one of them is you can check consistency of statistics in other data sources. So if you are using, let's say, NHTS or other regional household travel surveys, or if you have collected data in-house and you wanted to see the consistency of different variables that you collected and how the distributions look like, you can easily do so using T3D, and you can basically ensure consistency between different surveys. And then you can test research questions and hypotheses, right? So if you think that, for instance, because telecommuting increased, let's say, how that impacted transit usage, right? So you can just go to the T3D, and in the matter of seconds, you can analyze this viability relationship. And you can do so for different demographic variables as well, demographic groups as well, by customizing them using the T3D capabilities. And then the third use case is you can create statistics for reports and proposals and your papers, right? So in agencies, academics, NGOs, communities, so can quickly generate statistics nationwide or on regional trends in time use, travel, and telework, and include them in their reports and proposals without basically going through a lot of Google search or other searches. So it is very, very efficient. So with that, let's start the demo. So there are three different ways, basically, that you can access T3D. So here is basically the URL for the T3D. So Tomnet UTC GitHub IO T3D. And if you don't remember this, you can just go to Tomnet, our Tomnet webpage. Research and research. Under research, there is software and tools, and you can go and click here, and it will open the same thing. Or alternatively, you can go to our Travel Behavior and Demand National Center webpage, and here, right in the main page, you can access the T3D. So if you click here, it will open. So once it's opened, you are landed on the homepage. Okay, so there are different capabilities explained here. And then here, there's a quick demo here again for like a 5 minutes AI generated. You can also check this out on YouTube. And then here is the about page that explains the many things that are going on within the T3D. So the team, the data source. And then if you are interested in the data dictionary, then you can download it. So this is the data dictionary specific to the data sets that we pre-processed. So all the variables, what they mean, they're explained as data dictionary. And then there are some certain terms that we use here that are also explained here. So there's a concept of time poverty, zero trip making. So we explained all of these concepts here. And then there's also work arrangement, different work arrangements. And then these are also explained here. So these are some of the variables that we use in the T3D, and we thought explaining them here makes sense, as some people may not be aware of what they mean. So here on the top, you can basically click time use, and that will open the time use page. If you click the travel, so this is the travel dashboard, and this is the Telework dashboard. So this is the three topical areas. So within each three topical areas, you have three analysis types. So within your analysis, between your analysis, and cross-segment analysis. So basically, while you are playing with the data, when you landed on the T3D, so there are two different data sets that have been stored in your cache. So the download starts immediately, so that there is a very minimal delay in your analysis. So now the data set is stored in your cache, in your browser cache, so that everything will be instantaneous. So this is the within your analysis. Okay, so this is for the 2023, and you can check any year to change it, and you can basically limit your analysis to weekday and weekend. Okay, so here you have the segment size. Okay, so this is the number of respondents in the 2023 data set, and their share, okay, in the sample is 100%, because we are not basically segmenting at this moment. Okay, And then this is average time spent out of home per day per person. So it is 297 minutes. Number of activities per day, about 17 to 18 activities. Here is the time allocation by necessary, discretionary, and committed activities. Okay, so 62% are discretionary, 12% committed, and 24% necessary. And here is the time poverty. So 77% within this year are non-time poor, and 22% are time poor. And this is the main chart here that shows in-home and out-of-home time allocation for different activities on average. Okay, so within a day, so this is how much time people spent sleeping. So this is like 547 minutes. And then this is, for instance, here is the travel, and then here is the work. Okay, so this is the in-home and this is the out-of-home portion. You can just also click this and see this for out-of-home only, or click this and then see this for in-home only. Okay. And then, so what you can do, you can also segment this, right? So you are just interested in seeing this, let's say for males, you can just apply this and see this for males only. Or you want to see this, if you want to see this for young males, let's say for males 20 to 29, you can just do this and apply. So this is now showing male 20 to 29 years old. So, and their time use patterns. And you can choose another one, right? So you can choose white and see young white males and see how that looks like. Basically within 2023, and you can change this and see how that changes. And you can also do this for weekday and weekend as well. Okay. So this basically shows a complete picture of the time use patterns within a year. And you can also basically do the segmentation and have customized insights. Okay, you can just reset this and have this for all. And in the between analysis, you have the same thing, but now you have you can track this over time, right? So you can choose any activity, say traveling, okay, and you can see how much people are spending for traveling over the years. And you can also do the same segmentation, right? You can check for the males, and you can do so. And then you can also limit this analysis to a certain period. So if you're interested in after 2010, then you can do so. Okay, again, you have the capabilities for weekday, weekend, and then you can check this for all and other different activity types. And you can also use cross-segment analysis if you want to compare different groups, right? So let's say I want to compare the child and adult care and how much people spend for child and adult care on average, and you want to see males versus females, okay? And then you can see this here, and here are the legends. Or you can have like, I want to see this for let's say middle-aged females, and you can also add that segment, and you can see how that changes over the years. And you also have the sample sizes here to basically have an understanding of how small or large the samples are on which the statistics are created. So I will go to Telework and then explain that and then we can move to travel, where I think the most interests are. Okay, so this is the routine analysis for the Telework page. So here you have the workers by work arrangement. Because this is Telework, we are only using the worker segment here. So the non-workers are not included here. So within the workers, okay, and for weekdays, for all workers, full-time and part-time workers, this is the basically distribution of their work arrangement. Okay, so the 19%, they don't work at all on the survey day, and 20% they exclusively work from home, and then 50% they only works at their workplaces. And this is the multi-site workers who both work at home and in their workplaces. So if you limit this in full-time workers, this is how that looks like. You can also do the segmentation again, check this for males and for different people, okay? And then this is the work duration by work arrangement. And this is how this looks like over different days within that week. So how that changes from Monday to Friday. And this is also percent of time poor among these different worker groups. Okay, you can also do the between analysis and see how that changes. Okay, you see here, for instance, the uptake of the telecommuting starting with the COVID-19. Okay, and then this is the percentage over time. Again, you can see the percent changes from 2003 to 2023. Okay, so in-home only workers increased by 15%. For instance, commuters only decreased by 16%. And then you can also segment this again using this. You can limit the analysis to a certain period, and you can do this for weekend, weekday, or all. And you can also limit this to full-time workers or part-time workers or all. And in all of these analyses, if you want to basically isolate the effects of a holiday season, you can just click this button and this will basically exclude the December records from the data set. Okay. So, and then you can do this again, same thing for the cross-segment analysis. You can just choose any work arrangement and see how that changes from one basically demographic group to another. Okay, so and here is the travel page. Okay, so this is the between analysis. So what we have here, okay, so we have the segment size, okay, the share in the sample. So for instance, if you choose females, the share will be 46.5%, right? Sorry, males, and if you choose females, it will be 53.5%. Okay, and then you have number of trips per person per day, and you have daily travel duration per person. And then this is the breakdown of the activity purposes by activity purposes in terms of number of trips. And then this is the breakdown of the activity purposes for travel duration. So how much people spend daily by traveling to work, education, shopping, so on and so forth. And this is the number of trips by travel mode. And this is the duration by travel mode. So these are basically identical. One column is for trip purposes, one column is for travel modes. And this is the trip making rate, right? So what percent of the people who undertook no trip at all, basically spent the entire day at home on the survey day. So it is 25%, and 75% basically left home and undertook at least one trip. And this is the mode share on that day of for those people collectively on that day. And if you, again, you can limit this analysis to weekday, weekend, and you can choose any year to see how that complete profile looks like on different years. So this is the between analysis. So in between analysis, we have two types of capabilities. So one of them is by trip purpose. The other one is by travel mode. Okay, so if you click trip purpose, okay, so that shows for a period, okay, 2003 to 2023. Again, you can customize this, and for all days. And this is the all trip purposes. So you can come here and you can choose adults, okay, or childcare trips, or let me just make it more explicit and choose trips to education, okay. And then this is for work trips, okay. And then you can have this for social trip. Okay, so these are social trips because the scale is quite narrow, so we can just get rid of all by clicking the cross, and it will automatically adjust the scale and shows the distribution over the years for different types. So you can choose up to 5 different categories here. Okay, if you can just click everything, it will go back to all, and you can see this for duration. Again, number of trips per person, and you can look into the changes here. For instance, this shows for trip purposes. Okay, so people spend less number of trips for work, okay, undertake less education trips and less shopping trips compared to 2003, right? If you limit this 2006, this numbers will change, and you have the same thing for here for the duration. Okay, so this is duration, this is number of trips, and you can do this for travel mode. Again, you can just choose the travel mode, so auto, let's say transit. Okay, this is how that looks like. Again, you can get rid of all and you can see how that looks like. So this is the transit. Okay, so 0.03 transit and 2.56 trips by auto per day per person. Okay, so again, this is how things change here. And then this is how basically how the changes looks like here for duration by travel mode. Okay, and then you can choose other modes as well. So we have bike, and then bulk, and then unknown. So you can see everything here. Okay, so this is how things look like. And you can do the cross-segment analysis. So here you can, if you want to compare, let's say, males and females, okay, you can choose this and click add. So this will add 2 lines to here. Okay. Okay, and then you can check number of trips or travel duration. So I will check for number of trips for now. Again, we are using the trip purpose here. Okay, so you can choose trip purpose, right? You can choose, let's say, social. Okay, so this is how trip rates looks like for males and females. Okay, you can choose, let's say, a work, and you can observe the number of trips for work purposes between males and females. And then you can also add another group, right? So let's say I want to look into low income and high income and see how that changes. Okay, so let's say these are low income. Okay, I can add this. And then I want to choose middle income and high income at the same time. So let's say I want to include this. Okay, and I want to include this category. So this is basically everyone who has a household income above 75. So you can group them together as one segment. Okay. So this is the low income and this is the high income, and you can see the number of trips to the work and to all. You can see how this picture looks like. Okay, and you can see again the sample sizes at the bottom for each of these segments. And you can do this for travel mode, right? You can choose travel mode. Oops. Okay, you can do this by travel yeah, this is number of trips by travel mode. Okay, you can choose transit. Okay, and then you can analyze different segments here. So you can look into, let's say, low income again, and then you can look into high income, and you can see how number of transit trips changes between different segments. Of course, you need to observe the basically sample sizes at the bottom. Okay, so this is how this looks like, and you can have the same thing for travel duration. And this is for the auto. Okay, and this is for bike, and so on and so forth. So the other thing is, so we have, let me just introduce what kind of variables we have. So we have gender, we have age, education, race, employment, full-time, part-time, non-worker, household income, household size, census division. So we have 9 census divisions here. So that is the lowest you can go. And then this is the location, urban, not urban, work arrangement of the workers, time poverty status, main mode of transportation, and then trip making status. And you can basically use all of this to segment and customize your insights. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Pendyala.
Thank you, Irfan. That was a nice overview of the dashboard and its potential capabilities to look at, within year snapshots of time use, travel, and telework patterns, looking at trends over time, where you can customize the window or the period over which you're looking at trends. And then and also doing cross-segment comparisons to look at how different sociodemographic groups, how they have changed perhaps over time, allowing us to do quite a bit of equity analysis to see if some sociodemographic groups have been changing their patterns in certain ways compared to other groups, and what does that mean from an equity standpoint? And impacts that different socio-demographic groups may have experienced due to various disruptions and changes in socioeconomic conditions. So, so hopefully that gives you an overview. We will get into a Q&A. I think once we have heard from Dr. Polzin and some of the thoughts and perspectives about how travel behavior has been changing, what does that imply for transportation planning and modeling at large? I have known Steve for 30 years, and he has always challenged us with many intriguing questions. And so, Steve, all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Ram. Appreciate folks taking time today to be with us. If you get a American Time Use survey, check that down as the category. I really want to start with a couple things. First, let me talk about the ATUS in general. It's really one of those kind of underappreciated surveys by transportation planners historically. And I think the current trends that we've witnessed, certainly COVID, a great deal of sensitivity to equity, a lot of dynamics in terms of telework, e-commerce, those kinds of things, really sensitize us to needing to understand how people's behaviors in general are changing and how the activity mixes that they're participating in are changing. And this is really the go-to national data source to get a rich understanding of what's going on. And when you think about, MPOs implementing activity-based models, well, activity-based, that's the key. That's the time use piece of it that really holds together in terms of our understanding of what generates travel. So it's a very powerful, very useful data set in that sense. Its virtue of being one, collected by the federal government at no cost to the planning agencies, and it is an annual survey at a fairly substantial sample size with a strong history dating back to 2003, so you can look at what's been happening, which builds confidence in interpretation of the trends, etc. So that's been a real virtue of it. And it's turned pretty quickly. Irfan mentioned that the 2023 data is already integrated in this tool. And that's well ahead. For example, the Consumer Expenditure Survey data for 2023 isn't out yet. The American Community Survey data for 2023 isn't out yet, etc. So they do a good job of getting this out. I believe it was mid-July that they released the data. So it allows folks, when they get queries from policymakers and others about what's going on or wanting some quantification of some of the trends and things that they hear about as transportation issues, you can get pretty fresh, pretty current and timely information to support answering those questions and giving some context to it in terms of a nationally recognized and appreciated travel set. So I think that's a real asset. The other thing that you can do with this data set is you can use it to compare to other data sources, including American Community Survey, National Household Travel Survey, etc., as well as any local data sets that your state or metropolitan area collect. So you can use it to kind of give a context of both some validation but also some comparative understanding of how your region may or may not be similar or different to the others. So that's a real virtue of using this data set. It's powerful in that it does have modes and activities, and those are kind of the go-to critical issues that transportation planners pay attention to. Irfan demonstrated some of the data sets. He went through it fast, as you can tell. I've played with it. It doesn't take that long to get comfortable with it. It really doesn't, and that's another virtue. If you spend 45 minutes on the site, you'll be in a position where you can go back and find some to answer specific questions that might come up in your activities. This webinar will be posted as well. And he briefly showed the reference to the video that's integrated in there that gives some instructions and some help for getting comfortable on using that. There are a couple of characteristics of the data that you should be aware of. It is not multitasking. It asks them their principal activity. So for those of you that ate lunch while you listen to this webinar, you'll have to decide if you're going to split that time between eat lunch and attend webinar, or pick one of those two activities if you did them simultaneously. And so you need to understand that aspect. It is based on a one-day sample of time use, so it gives you very powerful averages of what's going on. The folks that are doing travel behavior modeling are increasingly interested in our desires to fully understand how behaviors are evolving, kind of a longer temporal period of weekly, monthly, etc., to appreciate what's happening in terms of changes in behaviors. So it's important to recognize those attributes of it. Of the kind of hot button issues that the industry is facing right now, an obvious one is recovery from COVID. And they did continue to collect data through COVID. They took a pause for, I believe it was, and Irfan can correct me here, a few months during the worst of the early COVID impact, where they weren't collecting data, but that can be filtered out if you want. But you do have data that really traces us through the COVID period and brings us through the end of 2023. So it allows you to understand what was going on behaviorally in terms of activity use during that time period. So that's a real nice feature of it. And particularly with the focus and the capabilities as it relates to telework. We're now at a point where, there's more information coming out about telework in general, and our understanding of it, but it's continuing to evolve. And so this gives you a tool to pull up some data and really understand what's going on with telework across various demographic segments as well. So it's very powerful in that sense. The other thing, and Ram mentioned this, obviously equity is a huge issue right now in terms of understanding equity. Certainly the aspects of equity associated with differential behaviors by sociodemographic group, you can really hone in on those very quickly and conveniently by using this data source. A couple examples of things that I've played with on it and looked at, and that's the trend in trip making. Both the National Household Travel Survey and the American Time Use Survey are confirming that we've gone through an era of declining trip making on a per capita basis. That's something that's not kind of generally appreciated by a lot of transportation professionals, but certainly not by the general media, the policymakers, and the public. So that's a key issue, and this really gives you validation of the very meaningful changes since the early 2000s. Trip making has simply declined. Some of that is demographic, but a whole bunch of it is technology substitution effects, and this gives you a way to look at both the trip counts and also the duration of time spent associated with travel. Similarly, you can look at that by submode. So those folks that are interested in things like bike, walk, and transit, which a lot of the transportation planning folks are, this gives you a tool to really hone in and look at those specific attributes of travel behavior. So those are some of the kinds of things that you can look at. Other things that have been changing that people have been sensitive to is this issue of those folks that aren't making any trips at all, that aren't showing any out-of-home activity, the isolation associated with that and the potential implications of that. Does that mean they need mobility? Are there other considerations, etc.? This lets you pull information about folks that aren't mobile and understand that segment of the population. Just in today's TRB news stories that came out, there was an article or discussion of the implications in well-being associated with, in effect, not having the interaction that's often associated with travel. So that's another thing that this gives you some insight into as well. So it's a very powerful capability to understand some of the nuances of what's going on in travel. Also, the time use changes associated with household characteristics, presence or absence of children, those kinds of things. You can get some insight into changes in time spent on care of others, household members and others, and that it gives insight into to travel needs and characteristics of the population that are changing, e-commerce, those kinds of things. How much is time spent on shopping changed, etc. So it really lets you peel into some of these issues and gain some insights, at least at the national level and the regional census regional levels that were referenced in the discussion, as well as for urban-rural breakdown. So it helps you address a lot of kind of contemporary questions that might come up, the kinds of things that policymakers might ask or the media might ask, or others, as well as providing a tool that can help you validate other data and other surveys that you might be conducting locally. So I'd encourage folks to take the time to get familiar with it. It's not hard, and I think you'll find it a very useful and very powerful data set to look at and to use for some of those kinds of purposes. So with that, let's turn to some of the questions that came in. I saw a couple come across the screen. I know one was, what does time poor mean? I know Irfan's done a great deal of work on that, so he can share some answers to that.
So which of the questions?
I think we've answered several questions kind of as they came in the chat. So I think maybe Irfan, you can kind of pick up some of these questions that we haven't answered yet. And then we can go back to some of the others that folks have.
I think because we are recording, maybe we can also answer again to all of these questions.
Sure.
So that people can refer to it, if they watch it later. So one of the question is, the data is for the entire nation. So is it like, what are the lowest level of census geography that people can use for in the T3D? So in ATUS, you can go as low as to the metropolitan area level. But going there in the metropolitan area level, for some of the metropolitan areas, you will have, let's say, 20, 30, 50, 60 observations. So the sample sizes are very small. And you can go in the state level, again, you will have very small sample sizes for smaller states. So we kept it in the census division level. So there are 9 census divisions, so that it kind of give you some healthy-ish sample size for all of those 9 divisions. I think the lowest sample size for a division that you can get for this lower dense areas is about 300 people. 250 to 300, and then you can go over 1,000 for other divisions within each year. Okay, so this is year by year sample sizes. So I think there was another question related to this, is how healthy, or how if you can trust the sample sizes for the regional state level analysis interpretation. You can trust that the sample size, you can trust the data as long as the sample size is healthy, and to determine if the sample size is healthy, it depends on your research question. So this is a judgment I think you need to make, looking into your specific research question and the sample size. But in general, when we compare the trends, even for very smaller samples, like 200, 150 people, we kind of saw that the trends are there, at least for the variables that we are using, but we cannot guarantee. So
Irfan, I think
yeah.
that's an important point. The fact that you've got trend data can let you kind of validate the reasonableness of a given year's worth of data in terms of how it fits in the trend compared to other places. So it can give you additional confidence beyond just judging the validity based on the sample for the referenced year.
That's right. Or another point that you can make, and I mean, you can just look into 2017. So if, let's say you have a data and old data for a division, right? And household survey data for a region, let's say. But this is like collected in 2017 and you wanted to see how things have evolved. So you can go to the 2017 ATUS data for that region or for that division. You can see if they compare well. So if they compare well, it can give you a healthy, a sense of basically confidence in the data that it captures the same patterns, right? So between your regional travel survey data and using ATUS, if you see the same pattern for that year, then you can have some sort of confidence that, you know, the trend that you are seeing in ATUS might actually be what's going on the ground. So the other question about the data set, so if you can download the data set. So the data set is currently available in the GitHub repository of that page. So I can also quickly share this. Let me quickly do that. So if you basically go here to the Tomnet, I mean, in the T3D, if you can just delete this. And if you go to the Tomnet web page of the GitHub web page, so this is our GitHub landing page. And if you click the Tomnet Wellbeing, the T3D dashboard GitHub, so that will take you to the repo. So this is all the codes that are basically behind the T3D. And if you go to public, and you will find the two data sets here. Okay. So this is the time use data set, and this is the travel data set that we use, two different data sets. And this is the data dictionary. You can basically download it through here, but we are planning to make it more explicit and have the basically URLs on the web page, so you can download it and use it for research purposes. And if you want to basically also want me to share the data set with you, I'm happy to share it for your data set as well, for your purposes as well. Yeah. And the other question, let me see.
Do the time poor question.
Which one?
What does time poor mean?
Oh, okay. So time poverty is the notion of having relatively less amount of time for discussionary activities. Okay, so how we are calculating it. So it's a notion usually used in economics and sociology, very similar to income poverty. Okay, so very similar to income poverty. This is time poverty. So how we calculate it, we basically have the links to the resources, to our publications, where we basically explain in more detail about what that means. But basically, if you rank everyone in your population, in your sample, based on the available discussionary time that they have on a day, and the 60% of your median person, so if you is your threshold for time poverty. So if you have less than 60% of discussionary time of your middleman or middle woman, your median person in the population, then you are deemed as time poor. Otherwise, you are non-time poor. So it's relative in terms, depending on your median person, just like income poverty. So it's an indication of well-being. So if you don't have enough time, basically, for discretionary time, your travel habits are quite different. Your trip making rates are quite different. Your mode choices are quite different, and your activity engagements are quite different. And for most of the cases, you are also deemed basically experiencing diminished well-being compared to overall population. So that's how it's defined and why we included it, so that you can have a sense of equity, basic implications from time poverty.
Irfan, if you could, there was a question about exporting the data sets to develop your
Yes.
own plots.
Yeah.
And you provided a narrative answer to that, but if you could go over that,
Yeah.
and then perhaps I think that some folks might simply want to be able to import the graphic, i.e. an Excel graph, for example, or be able to recreate a graph that they can manipulate in their own PowerPoints or reports or Word documents, what have you, and how's the best way to do that at this point?
Yes, that's a very good question. So basically you can download the data sets. Now you know the filters. You can even apply those filters within the Excel, and you can have the averages computed by yourself. So if you want to recreate any basically plot or graph, you can just download the data set from the GitHub, and you can apply your same code to generate your own basically graph. Or otherwise, you can just take a screenshot and then have your own picture. But we are planning to add this, download this graph, download this data behind this in the future. I mean, we just have limited resources at this moment because that requires a lot of coding to have this capability. Hopefully, we will add this in the coming months or years. Yeah. But you can basically do this on your own if you are interested in. Yes, this is a research project funded by TomNet and TBD. And then I don't know, Dr. Pendyala, if he wants to mention about the TBD Travel Hub at this point or no.
Yeah, I think that would be a good point to raise. So basically, one of the flagship endeavors, so the TBD National Center that is led by Chandra at UT Austin. So there's two flagship endeavors. So one is a longitudinal survey, and we're going to do the first wave of the longitudinal survey this fall. And that is called the Transportation Heartbeat of America survey. So that is to get a sense of perceptions and travel choices, mobility choices. And we're planning to do this longitudinal survey over the next 4 to 5 years to get a sense of how perceptions and preferences and mode use patterns are evolving. So that's the Transportation Heartbeat of America survey. It's intended to be a national survey of about 7,500 or so respondents. And then the other endeavor, flagship endeavor, is a travel data hub. So this hub is meant to be an agglomeration or, the compilation of multiple dashboards. So T3D, the dashboard we're presenting today, is meant to be a dashboard that will be a part of this overall hub. And so this hub is going to be a compilation of multiple dashboards that are being contemplated. So I think Shivam asked a question in the chat about, are there any future plans to integrate energy data sets into this dashboard? So we won't probably integrate energy specifically into T3D, but we're planning to develop additional dashboards. So these additional dashboards might cover mobility, energy, consumer expenditures based on the consumer expenditure survey data set. So we can think of multiple dashboards that are derived from different national survey data sets. And these dashboards will all be brought together under this hub, this data hub. That's basically a flagship endeavor of the TBD National Center. So stay tuned. Irfan is kind of conceptualizing and designing some of these additional dashboards, and we're thinking about the different capabilities and aspects that we'll want to incorporate in these dashboards. So we're very open to suggestions, ideas on how we can make these dashboards most useful for the broad community. So please do feel free to share your thoughts. But stay tuned for more dashboards that'll become part of this hub.
Irfan, if you could, I'd like to address the question and then have you comment on it as well, that Basar raised. And let me read that. It says ATUS is not primarily designed solely for transportation-related purposes. When you compare the results with other data sources designed for transportation, such as NHTS, have you identified any striking differences for the results related to travel? And then that goes on, for instance, and a couple comments on that. I do look at multiple data sets when I derive observations and conclusions and hypotheses about what's going on in terms of travel behavior. And one of the values of having trend data and multiple sources is it can give you confidence, at least in core things like, and the example I'll use is trip rates. NHTS has shown declining trip rates for multiple years, and that's confirmed by the ATUS. However, each of the surveys, when you start to get to that level, you need to be very careful about both understanding the survey methods and perhaps even more relevant is understanding the market segments that the survey is approaching. Are you using the right age groups, etc.? Are you using the same definition of employed or worker, those kinds of things? And I tend to, at least when I do it, I tend to again look for trends, look for consistency, and then go in and look at the characteristics of both the method that's used and the definitions that are used to see if there's reasonableness across the context. And telework is a classic example of that. You'll see multiple different folks with all kinds of different definitions or characterizations of percent of people participating in telework. And to do that, you need to make sure you're talking about the same market segment, you know, the same, i.e. age groups, all workers, part-time workers, full-time workers, all adults, etc., 15 plus, 16 plus, 18 plus, 21 plus, whatever age group you're thinking about. And then definition of telework. And one, for example, in the American Time Use Survey, gives you a neat way to look at time use during the course of the day. So if somebody works at home, goes to work, comes back home, works some more at home, the American Time Use Survey would capture that. So it can give you some kind of richer insight into what's going on than some of the other survey methods that measure telework participation rates. So keep that in mind. You can do comparisons. It's powerful to do comparisons, but make sure you understand kind of the nuances of the data source and the collection method. On NHTS, remember there was a 2017 was the last full big national NHTS. There was a 2022 survey. It was a much smaller sample, and it was in the midst of COVID. And so there's some real differences. They'll be doing another one on a biennial basis going forward. I don't think they'll have 24. I think it'll be kind of 24, 25 by the time it's executed. But we'll be looking at that going forward for consistency as well. They're changing methods in terms of data collection, so that can have an effect. Trip rate in particular can be influenced by definitions and data collection method, because you'll get short trips forgotten about or not reported, etc. So that's some thoughts on that. Irfan or Ram may have some other observations on that.
I can share some if Dr. Pendyala is not sharing anything. Okay. So, Bashar, great question, really. In addition to what Dr. Polzin said about, if you are familiar with how the data is collected, the sampling strategy, the sampling methods and everything, I think if you are familiar with this, even there are some differences, you can basically attribute those differences to those basically differences in the sampling strategies and sampling methods. But beyond this, even this is something I was recently discussing with Dr. Pendyala, that we find great consistency. Like, it's very striking, and that our in-house data collection efforts, the regional data collection efforts, the national data collection efforts, the public data sets, they, for the most part, they remarkably match. Okay, so recently we've been looking into transit and telecommuting relationship, and then we found the same relationship in our own in-house data collections, the COVID Future Survey, the PCRC, the Puget Sound Regional Survey, and then in ATUS, in NHTS. So we find like a very good, consistent relationship between these two. Another observation that I had comparing with NHTS and ATUS in terms of zero trip making percentages is like this. These are the people who basically report no travel during a day. So in ATUS, basically, you are required to provide the full time use diary, right, including the travel and where that travel happened. So you should expect that it should be more reliable. Because in NHTS, people might just felt lazy and say, "Oh, I didn't travel today," and they can just provide their demographic information. Even in these two basically contexts, you can see that the zero trip making rates, the trends are very consistent between ATUS and NHTS. I have a paper about this, and I can even share that with you. So, but for telework, again, we have compared ATUS with different sources. There is this Stanford work from home group, and then they also collect some data, and it's quite consistent in capturing trends. So these are some observations I had, but of course there might be some differences that we may not be aware of. So we should, I think, keep tracking this line of inquiry. So I will continue with some of other questions. Is travel for commute versus travel for leisure not sorted out? I'm not sure what this means, but we have travel purposes for work and for leisure, like for social and everything. I think this is captured in the data set in the dashboard. Any techniques for can we integrate built environment factors? So you can integrate built environment factors only at the metropolitan area level. So you can download the data set. I think it has the person ID information, and you can connect this to the metropolitan area information available in the ATUS, basically. And then you can bring average levels, basically the land use information of that whole metropolitan area. Beyond, how rich is the transits, transit service levels and all of this, and then the average land use dynamics, but you cannot go beyond this. So this is the only thing that you can do in terms of bringing and integrating built environment factors. I don't see another question. If we missed anything, please put in the chat.
I think there's one question about, can we trust this data for regional state level analysis and interpretation? A sample size of 10,000 seems very low for the whole nation. That's an interesting question. Certainly, indeed, a sample size of 10,000 is, can seem rather small for the entire nation. The sample size of 10,000 itself is actually not an issue. That is a fairly healthy sample size if you would like to get general patterns and trends of time use and activity engagement for the nation. The sample sizes become small once you start drilling down. So if you're starting to slice and dice the data set to very small sociodemographic and very specific, narrowly defined sociodemographic segments or geographic segments. So if you're looking at certain metropolitan areas or states, as Irfan mentioned, that have smaller sample sizes, then you may start running into sample size challenges. And that's why in the dashboard, we do provide the sample sizes corresponding to all the segments that you have chosen or filtered, so that you get a sense of the degree of confidence that you can have in the results that are being displayed. So you have to kind of exercise some caution as to how much you drill down, how many filters you apply in slicing the data set.
And let me add, that is not unique to this data set at all. I've done a lot of work over the years with NHTS, and you reach that same problem very, very quickly with a lot of issues. I did a lot of work with public transit, which is, you know, a couple percent mode share nationally. And then you look at minority populations or low income or something like that. And you just get tiny numbers that can't be reliable. And that's not, like I say, not unique to this survey or any of the national surveys. They simply don't have big enough sample sizes to be able to drill down and capture some of the nuances that we know are relevant to behavior at the localized individual level. But the national samples simply don't allow us to do that.
So in the last couple of minutes, Steve, looking at some of the patterns over time from 2003 to 2023, we have noticed a declining trip rate, daily trip rate per person, noticed a decline in average daily travel time expenditure. When you look at those declines, what does that mean to you from some of the historical paradigms or concepts about, travel time budgets and that sometimes folks have hypothesized are very stable over time and space? Thoughts and perspectives before we wrap up.
Sure. No, I think there's a couple kind of key elements there. One is I've speculated and hypothesized that, we think of travel behavior and mode choice, and the reality is we have a new mode choice, and that's to not travel and communicate through other electronic means, visually or orally. We can do e-commerce, we can do Zoom meetings like this webinar, distance learning, telemedicine, and on and on. So we really have a distinctively new capability because of the technology and the prevalence of communication capabilities and web information that really changed the kind of the logic of having some stability in a travel time budget. So to me, it's not surprising that we've seen a softness in trip rates and time spent traveling. There are some other attributes that are coming into play, though, that can either complement or offset that. We do have a changing demographic profile. Interestingly, one of the big generators of travel demand is households with kids, and we've got fewer of those now. And we've got an aging population, a large cohort of baby boomers that are aging out of the workforce. And they're, interestingly, not necessarily following the historic trend of traveling a lot less when they get senior, because a number of them were fortunate enough to work in the era of defined benefit retirement plans, and they're traveling and visiting kids and doing things, adding experiences. We're seeing a shift from consumption of products to pursuit of experiences that can be potentially an offsetting trend. But the data is fairly compelling that per capita travel peaked early in the 2004-5-ish timeframe, and has continued to be below that level since that time, and dipped even further during COVID, and is still not back to the 2019 levels in terms of time commitments yet. So there is some very real changes due to, again, both demographics, but predominantly the technology substitution effect. A little bit related to that, we're seeing where people used to do a lot of activities because they did things themselves. Now they contract out for services on a lot of things, that often implies less travel for themselves because the contract service provider is assuming some of that travel. So it's less kind of household-based travel, and it's being shifted over into workforce workforce travel demand. So it's a little bit less on the personal level, but a little bit more on the workforce side level of travel. And I think that's a meaningful impact on travel and travel behavior as well, that we're seeing. We are definitely at a point in time where you know, what had been fairly stable historic trends through the 50 years kind of pre-2005 are definitely changed since then and continuing to change. And with things in the offing, you know, automated vehicles, et cetera, you know, we may well continue to see changes. We're inevitably going to have even more powerful communication capabilities, and more things will be able to be done online, et cetera. So travel may shift from less being a necessity and more being something we pursue for recreation and socialization, and the necessity part of travel will diminish and turn into service providers providing that mobility and individuals focusing on other attributes of travel or travel for other purposes than has historically been the case.
Right, great insights, and thank you all for joining us and staying with us. So I think we're at time, and so we will conclude this webinar. So please feel free to explore T3D, share any feedback or comments that you may have, and we look forward to continuing this conversation about the evolution of travel behavior now and into the future, as we see a lot of different disruptions taking effect and having an impact on travel demand. So thank you all, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.